So, off the rip, I'm going to go ahead and admit that this is an area that I'm still completely new to. We're talking about Solana investigations, and I will be the first to admit that I have not done this for very long at all. I'm honestly probably about 2 months into it, roughly, like doing it nights and weekends. So we're talking like some real newbie kind of stuff. I'm gonna keep this video obviously pretty simple. I'm not going to talk out of my ass as much as humanly possible, but I am going to talk a little bit about what I've learned. A, because it's valuable for me to talk about it, and B, because there might be like 3 or 4 people who are actually newer at this than I am, so maybe they'll get something out of it. So, Solana investigations, what do I mean by that? So, blockchain, not going to go into like what blockchain is. If you're looking for that, like Three Blue, One Brown has an awesome series on like how blockchains work. Not going to go into that. But the whole idea behind blockchain is that you can spin up a wallet, you can fund that wallet, and you can make transactions with that wallet. And all of those transactions are publicly accessible. I can go in and view every single transaction that any wallet has ever made, at least on Solana. I think XMR is a little bit like more private. Don't really know how that works, but we're going to be talking about Solana here. And this whole idea is basically like your identity as the wallet holder is technically private. Like if I'm looking at a wallet, it's just a big string of letters and numbers. There's no identity tied to that on the blockchain. So your identity is private. All of your transactions are public. That creates a very interesting world here where there's obviously tons of scams, like the actual president of Argentina got rug pulled. Hilarious. Absolutely hysterical that the leader of a country was involved in like a Solana scam, a meme coin scam. So I am building a blockchain intelligence platform. What that means is it's going to take all of the data that's available. We're talking about millions of transactions in a minute. And it condenses it all down into more human readable data that you can then mine out and figure out interesting things from it. So anything from fraud to bot activity, different things like that. It's interesting. It's a really hard problem set, and it's something that a lot of people aren't really doing that much because of how difficult it is, and because the money honestly is in scams. Like being honest, there's not as much money in like anti-fraud stuff as there is in the fraud, especially since like fraud's legal now. Apparently, like you can just go and do fraud. Um, we're gonna ignore that part. So I'm building this, blockchain intelligence program. Obviously, I need to know a little bit about how the blockchain works and how these transactions work, and kind of how the scams themselves and like a lot of that kind of works as well. So, one of the first things that I discovered is that like the basics are pretty easy. You can go on SoulScan and type in any wallet that you want, and you can view every single transaction that wallet has ever made. You can view all of the wallets that that wallet has interacted with, so any of the wallets that they've sent money to. You can view all of the coins that that wallet has ever seen or that wallet has ever bought. Then you can go into the wallets that are basically created for those coins. They're called like programs instead of wallets. And you can view every transaction that's ever been made within that coin's mint, which means that like any transaction that's ever, like used that coin before or that like has bought and sold that coin, you can view all of those transactions. Then you can go into those wallets and you can look at all of their transactions. As you can imagine, there's a ton of data out there, which means it's a very hard problem set. When there's a ton of data out there that's very, very complex, it's a hard problem to solve. Like there's a large problem set of hard problems to solve. So that to me kind of interesting. So when you dive into it, it's not the difficulty of like the transparency of the data. It's not even the difficulty of getting the data itself. You can set up an RPC node, which I'm going to go into more detail in another video. You can, go to like a third-party hosting provider and get an RPC node that you can literally fetch all the data you want for fairly cheap. Like I'm paying like $50 a month for 20 million requests a month. Like that's a lot. It's not going to get you anywhere close to like pulling down every transaction for even like pump fun, but like it's a lot of data. Um, so it's not hard to get the data. It's not really that hard to read the data. It's really hard to get meaningful information out of the data. Like I can get every transaction that a wallet has ever made, but like actually analyzing that data and doing something useful with it, very, very hard. Taking that data at scale and trying to find like patterns of fraud or patterns of like pump and dumping or patterns of, like bot activity, very, very, very hard. Like finding that at scale and identifying it and analyzing it in such a way that you can say this bot has made this much money through this specific tactic over this period of time, incredibly difficult. And that's the kind of problem set that I want to start tackling. So, what have I kind of learned in the beginning? There are a lot of bots. One of the things that a lot of the folks who do this professionally will tell you is that the primary money makers on the Solana blockchain are not the Zoomer kids that talk about how much money they've made on the Solana blockchain. And they're making like $10,000-$20,000 a day sometimes, just trading meme coins. A lot of them are doing fraud as well, but we're not going to get into that without like specific data. But the people that are making the most money are the botters and the insiders. The insiders are basically just folks who are doing just straight up fraud. Like they're launching meme coins and pump and dumping them and making actual millions of dollars. The bots are more interesting. They are using coordinated behavior to either fraudulently pump and dump coins or to do things like MEV, like extraction. And what MEV extraction is, it's kind of complicated if you don't understand how Solana works, and I don't. So I'm kind of trying to learn about it as well. Essentially, what MEV does is you've got a transaction that's about to hit a coin. And these MEV bots are really, really fast, and they see that transaction is about to go through. What they're going to do is front run it by paying a larger fee to get their transaction put in front of the transaction that they're targeting. And their transaction, as well as the original transaction, is going to drive up the price. And then the MEV bot is going to very quickly sell out of that position before anybody has any idea what's going on. And they're going to make a very small amount of profit on that transaction because they essentially use the original non-fraudulent transaction as a liquidity boost to pump the price up by, a couple of percentage points. And then they do that millions of times, and they're making tons of money off of this. There are also snipers. Snipers are the ones that everybody talks about. Snipers, essentially what they do is they either use just sheer speed or they use insider information and sheer speed to get into a coin as early as humanly possible with tons of liquidity, pump up the price, wait for other people to see how fast that price pumped up, and then they jump in on the hype, and then the sniper sells. They either sell in like one giant transaction and probably miss out on a ton of money, or they sell over time as more people get in and drive the price up. Those very, very incredibly common. There are also bundlers, and these bundlers can kind of act alongside snipers, but essentially what a bundler does is instead of purchasing a ton of the percentage of liquidity of a coin, they are going to create 20 wallets and split the transaction across those 20 wallets. So instead of buying 20,000 coins, they're going to create 20 wallets and buy 1,000 coins in each wallet. And what that does is for people who are like trading legitimately, they're going to go into a coin and say, oh, well, this coin is bought by 20 different wallets. It sounds like a legitimate investment, so I'm going to go ahead and buy in because 20 other people have bought it. Well, that's not really the case. One person has bought it. If they saw that only one person has purchased like 80% of the coin's liquidity, they're going to say, well, this is just a clear pump and dump. But if they say that 20 people hold 80% of, the coin's liquidity, they're going to think it's more legitimate. The bundling is incredibly common. It's so common that like the normal Zoomers who are trading these coins know how to find it. And a lot of platforms have actually started like showing it within the UI that they think it's bundled. So it's a legitimate tactic. I say legitimate. It's like a real tactic that's out there that you can kind of spot. And I think that's going to be one of the first things I start to try to detect in a lot of these coins is finding bundlers, because that's kind of interesting. Anyways, this is all basic stuff. If you're kind of already confused, like I am, this is the basic stuff. We're not even getting to like the really complex, hard stuff. We're just right now looking at the basics. And even that is interesting. I think I've learned a lot about how kind of complex this environment can get. And it's made me more interested in this like data mining project going forward. Anyways, that's about it. Take it easy. Peace.